Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Howdy folks, and welcome back to another exciting Christmassy episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I am Luke, your host, as always. And as always, I hope you're doing well, hope you're all good. Get a bit of the business out of the way first. Thank you to World Books for sponsoring this episode and sponsoring this show. Just a quick reminder to anybody, I think this will be your second to last time to actually use this code. Next week, if I end up getting around to doing an episode, that will be your last week, and I'll let you know then. But at the end of this year, the end of December, on the 31st of December, this code will not work at all. So I'm just letting you all know, use it as soon as possible. But the code is nerdy10. NERDY 10 or higher case. Use that at checkout. Get yourself 10% off on everything and anything on their store. It's a cost of living crisis. We all need to learn how to save money, and especially during Christmas when we got to buy gifts for people, it's all about saving money. So use my code nerdy10, save yourself 10% off on whatever you order from them. And just remember that this code is only valid till the end of this year, 31st of December. So use it as soon as possible. Also, please follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod, just to keep up to date on all things that I am doing and talking about there. My Twitter handle recently reached, I think, 800 followers. I think I'm on 807 as I record this, which is amazing, which is incredible. I never thought I'd ever get this far in a year, but we have done, so I greatly appreciate everybody listening to this who's followed me on there, so thank you. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel at the Nerdstalgic Podcast. I mean, again, it helps me out greatly. It makes the show a lot more accessible to people that don't have Spotify, don't have Anchor, and don't have all these other podcasting apps, that they can just go onto YouTube and then just listen on there for free without even having to make an account. But if you do have an account and you're listening, please do subscribe. It helps me out greatly. So today, now the business is out of the way, I'll be talking about the Voyage of the Dawn Trader, the Chronicles of Narnia, film 3. There'll be no story time today, unlike there was no story time for Prince Caspian, but I did have a few things to say about that. But today there'll be no story time for Prince Caspian. So what I've decided to do is kind of inform you and update you on something. I don't want anybody to worry. I don't want anybody to get concerned or anything like that. Everything's all fine. But I just want to let people know that on the 23rd of December, I'll be going in for an operation. Again, no need to worry. It's an investigation operation, investigative. Yeah, that word, operation. So they just want to investigate, have a look inside me. But there's nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. Well, as far as I know, hopefully, fingers crossed, everything's fine. I just wanted to let everybody know that I'll be recovering over Christmas, so that if I don't get around to putting another episode out, that is why. But I don't want anybody to panic. I don't want anybody to worry. I just want to let everybody know that this week, I'm recording this on the Monday, so today is the 19th of December. So hopefully, if I get this out before my operation, then just let you know that I'm going on the 23rd, so I won't be as active after that. If I release this on the 23rd or on the Saturday, which will be the 24th of December, then I'll be in recovery. So I just wanted to let people know. So there's no need to worry. It's a complete investigation operation. I've been waiting for this. I was meant to get it last year, but because of COVID and a lot of backlog of other people, I've had to wait a year basically to be seen. It was either have it done now and get it done as soon as possible, or push it back to next year. But because if I chose to push it back to next year, I would then have to wait possibly longer or even another year before I get this operation, and I can't wait another year. So no need to worry, no need to panic. Don't want to scare anybody. I'm completely fine. It's just an investigation. I just wanted to let people know what is going on, and why I might not have another episode out or anything like that. So Just want to keep everybody up to date, and yeah, so get all the sort of sad, somber sort of side out of the way. Let you know it's a time of Christmas. It's a time of perpetual giving and happiness and love. So I'm going to move on to the review. I had a great fun with this movie. This film is very much an adventure movie. Like they kind of in the first film they went mystical, fanciful, epic, Lord of the Rings style. With the second movie, they kind of went a lot darker, a lot more mature, still kept the mystical sort of fantasy epic battles of like Lord of the Rings, but kind of was much darker. I think I used the words very much going in the route of the Harry Potter movies and Harry Potter books, like Prison of Azkaban onwards, how they started to get very sort of mature and dark. That's where Lord of the Rings. Well, Lord of the Rings has always been dark. But I mean, Chronicles of Narnia, their movies and the books started to go that way as well. But with this one, it was a bit of a U-turn. They went in the vein of more adventure, more sort of fantasy, sort of Pirates of the Caribbean-esque way with it. And I quite liked it for that. It's kind of weird how they kind of went really, really dark, and then they kind of converged in a different direction and was like, no, we're going in sort of a Pirates of the Caribbean side of it. But I love the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, so I completely enjoyed it. So this one's going to be a fun one to talk about, and I look forward to diving into it. So without further ado, for the last time, well, the last time for the movies, it's time to go back into the wardrobe and see Disney's rendition of the Voyage of the Dawn Trader. All right, guys, let's jump right back into it, shall we? So here we are back in Narnia. We're on the Dawn Trader this time. We're on a ship. So we're not on land. We're on sea. We do go to land a bit in this adventure, but we're mostly on the ocean. We're on the sea on the Dawn Trader. This review is going to run a very much kind of the same as way I've done the other reviews for Lion Witch in the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian. I've wrote down notes. Again, the same thing happened here that happened with Prince Caspian. And if I'm being honest with myself, it kind of happened as well with Lion Witch in the Wardrobe. Was the fact that I was so enraptured and I was enjoying myself so much that I hardly touched my paper. It's kind of like going for a sort of driving test and then driving the best that you can, just enjoying it and trying to kind of just be the best sort of driver you possibly can be. And then you look over and you look at you look at the sort of examiner and they hardly touch the paper and then they say you pass. You know what I mean? So I know it's a weird sort of thing to kind of connect it to, but that's kind of what it's like really. Is the fact of I'm so sort of enjoying myself, I'm just not looking at the paper. I forget that I need to write things. Oh god, okay, I need to jot this down. So same as I did with Prince Caspian, I've got a bunch of notes and I'm just going to go through them like that. As I go on, things are not going to completely be coherent in terms of story. Like I might miss scenes completely, jump ahead and that sort of thing, because this is how I like to review things. I can do the whole stickler of just being like certain bits, but I find it's easier to just be like, give you the beat for beat of what happens in terms of a story, and then just give you my favourite sort of parts. So as the story for this, we have the two Peveril children, Edmund and Lucy. This time they're accompanied by their weird cousin, Eustace Scrub, who's basically useless, but useless Eustace, as I like to call him. He eventually becomes useful eventually, and he does play a bigger part in this book later on, and a lot later on in the latter books as well. But for this one, he is pretty useless for the beginning of this story. They find themselves in Narnia. They find Prince Caspian. 3 years have passed since they were last there. I think it's only been a year or so for them, the Peveril children, since they were last in Narnia. But 3 years have passed. Narnia is now peaceful. Now they've completely stopped all wars. They're at peace with everybody. And now that they're at like peace, Caspian's decided that it's now the best time to go out and find my father's friends and loyal sort of supporters that kind of, before his father died, um, went out to kind of find out, to kind of explore the lone islands and to kind of experience what is going on, because there's like a big mystery that was going on, which I'll get onto in a minute. And basically, they go off to kind of figure out what happened and obviously why they were gone. Miraz came in, killed Caspian's father, and that those sort of lords never came back to kind of seek revenge because they never knew they were kind of lost on this adventure. So now everything's back to normal. Caspian's basically decided that he's going to chart a course and go to the Lonely Islands and just find out exactly what happened to these lords. So that's where we meet Caspian in the story. That's where we meet him with the Peveril children. So they go on adventures. They go to the Lonely Islands. They find slave traders there. They stop the slave traders. They go to I'll try and remember now. They go to another island that has a magician, like I think they're called Duffelfuds. It sounds like a sexual term. It's not. It's just weird English. They found Duffelfuds. That's it. I did write it down, but I'll get around. I think it's later on in my notes. But you have the hold on, Duffel pugs. Yeah, Duffel pugs, which are like one-legged, big foot sort of creatures. They go to they meet the magicians, and they find out what happened to all the other sort of lords that went missing. They go to the land of evil. They go to Aslan's table. They actually I think in the book they go other places as well. They go to one island where there is a pool that anything that touches this pool turns into gold. And Eustace gets cursed and gets turned into a dragon. They fight things in this evil mist. They save the day. They meet Aslan at the end, and then their story's over. Really, like it is a very much adventurous sort of story. Like I'm giving you the footnotes. They're obviously it is a lot more grander. This movie is again almost like a 2-hour long film. Like it's a lot more grander than what I gave it. But kind of give you the footnotes. Like they do go on a lot of adventure. Like it feels like a Pirates of the Caribbean sort of movie, which is kind of fitting because the Walden Company that did the Chronicles of Narnia movie also did Pirates of the Caribbean, so it kind of works in tandem there. But that's kind of to give you the idea of the story. The book and the movie kind of follow; they don't converge so much. Like unlike Prince Caspian and Lion and the Witch, they're very much close knitted with each other. They're kind of quite authentic to the experience. Whereas in this one, if I remember correctly from the books, I do believe they kind of missed some things out here and there. One thing that I do mention it in my notes about how Eustace changes back from a dragon back to being a boy. That one was greatly changed, but again, that one needed to be changed for it to be actually a PG sort of Disney movie. Otherwise, they wouldn't have got away with it. But that's sort of that's the story. Obviously, as we go on, I'll give a lot more details when I actually talk about my notes. But that's kind of give you a rough idea of what this story is about. So on to my notes. So the adventure begins. Edmund is turning into Peter, wanting to fight, and wants to be a soldier. You know, kind of like Peter was in terms of Lion, Witch, the Wardrobe, and Prince Caspian. He wanted to be a soldier, like especially in Lion and the Witch, he wanted to go off and do what all the other lads were doing. You know, what his father's doing. He wanted to be a soldier, really. He wanted to go save the day. Then when Prince Caspian comes along, it's very much the fact of he's already been a king, he's already been an adult, but now he's back to being a child with a man's mind, and that he wants to fight. And by the end of that movie, he realizes that he's scratched that itch. He's done what he felt like he needed to do. It's done for him. Whereas Edmund is now grown up and he's now sort of gotten to the point where Peter was, where it's like, well, I've been a king, I've been a soldier, I've led armies, I've done everything. Like I've proved myself multiple times. Because he tries to World War II still happening. They don't really give a year, but if I had to guess the year, I would say, considering that they were getting evacuated, I would say it was around 1941, 42-ish sort of time, around then. Maybe a bit later, might be a bit earlier, but I would say it's around about then. Now they're a bit older, probably the later stages of the war. But obviously they're still looking for recruits. They're still looking for people to sign up. And Edmund tries to, but it doesn't work because Lucy basically foils him, comes in and goes, Edmund, you've got to come help me. And they all sort of be like, yeah, come back later. But there were many stories like that back during the war where I heard a story, and again, I don't know if it's true, and I'm sure other people have heard the story as well. But I heard the story where young lads would be really much underage, would go into stand in line, go into recruitment offices. Um, then they would be seen, and they'd give the soldier their card, which has all their details on it, their their health record and their age and all that sort of details. And they'd go, "How old are you?" They would fumble up and kind of get it wrong, and because they were so in need of soldiers that even though they shouldn't have, most places would just take boys that were underage. So they would say to them, like, they'd hand them their pass back, and they'd go, leave this building, go round the block, come back in, join the queue, and when you come to talk to me again, you're 18, right? You're above age. And again, that's what some boys would do. They would go out, go around the block, come back, stand in line, they'd get back to the guy. The guy would pretend like they'd never seen them before. Again, hand them the card, look at them, say, "When's your birthday?" And again, they'd rehearsed it in line. It would be X, Y, and Z. Okay, you're 18, you're in the army, ship you off. Again, it's not sort of legal, but again, they were so in need of soldiers that they were willing to kind of overlook the age gap. Like, the idea was, if they're brave enough to not just forge and lie and go to prison for potentially all of the war, and maybe even longer for falsifying and trying to sort of impersonate a soldier when you're sort of too young to be a soldier, that they were seen as, because if they're brave enough to do that, they're probably brave enough to kind of go to the front line, which wasn't always the case. But that's just the time that it was back then. That's just kind of what happened. Obviously, we can't relate because we've never been in that situation. But during the time of the First and Second World War, these are just the things that happened. This is just the honor that men, young boys had. Young boys saw their fathers and best friends and brothers and so on and so forth go off and fight. They wanted to do the same. It was just a different world, a different time. But you know, Edmund is trying to be that guy again. He's trying to be what his brother was. He's trying to be king. Now his brother is no longer sort of be able to go back to Narnia, that he's no longer the king. So then it falls on to Edmund to be the new High King of Narnia. But again, it's a fact of, he's stuck in the real world now. It doesn't matter where Narnia is. Adults won't understand. Adults don't care. We're in the real world. So Edmund is trying to be that soldier again. Lucy again is going through the same sort of change. She's now growing up. She's now growing into being a woman, growing into being herself, and now she wants to be like Susan. She wants to be beautiful. She wants to be loved. She wants to be admired by boys, and she wants to be noticed by boys, and that sort of thing. Again, as a lad, I can't really say much about it because, again, I don't know anything about it. Like, if I had a co-host I wish I had somebody here, like a girl who could sort of best explain it. I can't, so I won't even try. But yeah, she basically wants to be like a sister. She wants to be young, beautiful, and admired and loved. And she even flirts with Caspian a bit here, So even she's coming into her own now. Even she's growing up, and so she's starting to go through the change of actually becoming an adult, a grown woman and a grown man for Edmund. And again, this is just sort of like hammering home the idea of, like, if they was to go back to Narnia, it would be their last time, because they're growing to the age of not believing. Even though they'll probably always believe in Narnia, they just are too old to come back. It's more of a kids sort of game, sort of thing. Even though it's quite dangerous, and that Peter does ask the question in the second movie, like, if you die in Narnia, like, what happens in the real world? Do you just go back to the real world, like, or do you die because you died here, that you're dead there? Like, it's that sort of question. But again, it's an interesting one. It's one that never gets answered, so it's up in the air. Another thing I want to know: Will Poulter plays Eustace. Will Poulter's a perfect actor. Like, I love Will Poulter. I've been a fan of him since School of Comedy, which is like a British TV show, which was all kids doing adult jokes, doing adult humor, swearing, that sort of thing. It was like what's the word I'm looking for? It was I like it. What kind of what's the drama where it's like, oh God, I'm really, really going to beat myself up now. It's the type of drama, type of comedy where each one's like, I know what it is. Like, I'm just going to explain it and sound like an idiot, but it's where each scene is a different. It's a sketch comedy. That's it. It was a sketch comedy show. They ran for about 2 seasons. I've got the box set because I'm that much of a fan, but I've been a fan of him since then. Since like The Son of Rambo, I know that's a good. That's a movie to review one day. The Son of Rambo. That's a weird film. That's gonna be a fun one to review. Maybe in season 2. But fan of him since then. I loved him in Maze Runner. I've loved him in Dope Sick quite recently. I watched it at Dope Sick on Disney Plus. He was amazing in that. I highly recommend it. But he's just a fantastic actor. I think he's underappreciated. But he's going to be Adam Warlock in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which I feel like that will kind of propel him to stardom. That people will start taking notice of him because he's just a fantastic actor. But I feel like he just deserves a lot more sort of praise than what he gets, and hopefully he will now. But him as Eustace was perfect casting, absolutely perfect casting. It works in line because, like I said, with this movie, they went the route of adventure, but they also went the route of comedy, being a lot more humorous than the last movie. Less serious, more sort of adventure-y, sort of huzzah, you know, one-liners and that sort of thing. And Will Poulter, again, he's got the chops for it again because of doing School of Comedy. He knows how to do comedic acting, and he knows how to do serious acting, and basically he knows at the time he knew how to basically be a child, and he could be stuck up, but he could also be sort of laid back. And again, it's all just the fact of how well of fantastic casting and how well of an actor he is. So the painting starts to leak and the adventure begins. This is where as I really noticed that with like Prince Caspian and with this movie, that the actual getting into Narnia has actually been sped up. Well, like in Lion Witch of the Wardrobe, they've got to set the scene, they've got to set the characters up, kind of give you sort of like the essence of like this is what's going to, this is who the characters are, and just to give you a chance to get to know them. And by the second movie, you already get to know them, you already know who they are, you know the situation. So you know you have them, you have Peter and Edmund fighting, trying to be sort of the big soldiers men that they are again. You've got Susan basically being a grown lady. She's being noticed by boys, but she doesn't really want to talk to certain lads. Again, you get that, as I mentioned in the Prince Caspian review, and then it's the fact of, well, the train disappears and now they're in a cave and now they're in Narnia again. In this one, it's very much the fact of Edmund's trying to sign up for the army, doesn't work. Lucy is now trying to be noticed by boys. We're now back to being Eustace telling the story. Eustace spies on the two children while they're talking about Narnia. Basically says like, it's people like you that are a burden on society, ones that just read books and fantasy books and don't read fact or fiction, like just they don't read books about facts and history and real world stuff and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, the painting starts to leak, and they're in Narnia. Basically, the room gets flooded. They all get sucked into the painting and they're in the ocean, and they get saved by Narnians. And who should they find? Prince Caspian. Which I will get on to the whole Prince Caspian English thing in a minute. But I wrote down a few quotes as I was doing this because it really made me laugh. Eustace is kind of flapping around in the water. Obviously, Susan and Edmund, Peter, Lucy and Edmund know where they are. They know the game and what's going on, so they're okay. They're relaxed. They're loving it really. They're back in Narnia. You get Eustace, who doesn't know what's going on. Is like one of the Narnians grabs him. He goes, "Don't worry, you're in Narnia." And then Eustace is like, "I don't want to be in Narnia. I want to be back in England." Again, I don't do it justice. It's really funny when Will Poulter does it, but it's one of those that makes me giggle. Then we move on and we meet Prince Caspian, and now Prince Caspian is now all of a sudden English, and no one questions it. Like none of the previous, I know 3 years have passed, and I guess for argument's sake, you could sit there and say, "Well done, 3 years have passed in Narnia." That majority of people in Narnia are British who speak English. There's a potentiality that he kind of got his accent from actually spending 3 years around Narnians, that his accent has kind of changed. Or you could say that the actor that was doing the accent in the Prince Caspian movie didn't want to keep doing the Spanish sort of conquistador sort of accent, so he decided to change it to English because it's just easier, because again the actor is British anyway. I don't know, but it just kind of made. I remember when I first ever watched it, I was kind of like, "That's not Prince Caspian." Like I know it's Prince Caspian, it's the same actor, but that's not how Prince Caspian sounds, right? Just because you put a beard on him and you've made his hair a bit longer, doesn't mean, right, that's that. That's the same guy. Like he's not speaking the way he did. He didn't have the same accent. Like I don't, he just loses his accent completely. There's not even no sort of like remnants of that Spanish sort of accent. It's completely gone. It's completely just British, like literally straight out of like a posh school, like somewhere in like London. You know what I mean? Like proper English. You know. But no one questions it, and I was always sitting there like, okay, this seems a bit strange. Why is no one questioning that he no longer sounds the way he did? Like, I know it's been 3 years, but it doesn't make any sense. But okay, so that made me laugh. And then another thing as well, Reap Cheap is back. I love Reap Cheap, Ripper Cheap. He's voiced by Simon Pegg. Even though, and this is going to be a weird thing to say. Usually, when voice actors are changed for certain memorable characters, it doesn't always work. But the weird thing is about this film is that Eddie Izzard did a fantastic job for the character in Prince Caspian. And I would have loved him to come back and do the voice of Reaper Cheap for this movie, but they got Simon Pegg. But the thing is, Simon Pegg also does a fantastic job in the role as Reaper Cheap. You know, so even though I would prefer Eddie Izzard because again, he's from what I know from that movie. It's still the fact of Simon Pegg does a well enough job where it's like, oh, okay, fair enough. Um, so that they changed his actor again. I'm not sure why. I'm sure there was probably a reason that Eddie Izzard probably either didn't want to do it or they couldn't get him. There must have been like scheduling issues, so they got Simon Pegg. I don't know. I didn't really look into it. But again, it works either way. Again, it's good casting. It's not like they got another actor that couldn't do the job justice. Like they got an actor who could do the job justice in Simon Pegg. So that works. Then we finally get around to meeting the slavers. They're defeated by Prince Caspian. It kind of made me laugh as I was watching it. I was like, this has really Prince of Persia vibes. It just looks like where the little island is, where the little town that they're in on this little city that's been built on this one island. It looks very much something from Prince of Persia. There's a lot of wall running, there's a lot of climbing around things, and a lot of sword fights. And again, the way they're dressed looks very sort of Prince of Persia esque, and I really enjoyed that. I quite enjoyed the Prince of Persia movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, even though it makes no sense. As really he should be a Persian actor, not a white American. But again, we'll gloss over that because again, Disney have been known to do that for I think Disney actually made that movie as well. So Disney have been known to do that a lot. Okay, so we're not going to get into that political conversation, but it was just nice to kind of have that kind of sense of feel of, again, it adds more to the adventure as well. The more high stakes, you get slavers and Prince of Persia esque and saving the day from slavers and pirates and that sort of thing. It very much works, and I really really enjoy it for that. Then we have Eustace and Reaper Cheap are at odds, and they become good friends. It's kind of funny how they start their relationship, where he calls him a rat, and he doesn't like him, and he hates him, and then he tries to steal some food because he's hungry, and Reaper Cheap's like, listen, just give me the orange, and we'll say nothing about it. And Eustace tries to grab him, and as he grabs him, he grabs his tail. He's like, let go of my tail, right? That tail was given to me by Aslan, right? And then he basically picks up a sword, hands it to Eustace, and like, that's it, we're fighting. And it's kind of he's not like a fight to the death. He's just trying to kind of get Eustace out of his shell to stop being such a basic like turd burger. You know what I mean? Just a real sort of knobhead. You know what I mean? Just like, you're in Narnia, you're in a fantasy world. Enjoy yourself. Open up. You don't have to be so closed off. One of my favorite lines, and I didn't write it down in my notes, but it made me laugh. Where Eustace walks around the ship and he's talking to his cousins. Again, he's still not really sort of believe where he is. And I can't remember who says it to him. I think it's Caspian or somebody, or Reap Chip says to him, "Oh, you finally found your sea legs." And straight away, about missing a beat, he goes, "Never lost them." Again, it's silly. It just makes me laugh. Again, it's just the comedic timing is just so sort of perfect. It's just on point. Always makes me laugh. Then we meet the Duffel Pugs, that the unseen is now made seen, and that we find out that the wizard, basically to protect them from the evil mists that is kind of killing people and sort of taking them away. He made them unseen for their safety. But they're very much the fact of, they want to be suppressed, but they don't want to be suppressed. So they think that the magician is a suppressor. He is the bad guy, and he's like, I'm not bad. I'm just trying to help him. But everything I do, they just kind of hate me for it. And they won't leave him alone, so he just blows like felt at them, and they're like, "Oh no, look, it's a curse!" And actually, like, it's not. It's just felt. It's just bits of fluff. You know what I mean? But again, they just see him as the oppressor. They just see him as the bad guy, but really, he's actually trying to help them out. But the Duffel Pugs are really sort of cool, sort of Narnian sort of creatures. Really, they're just like they're just bodies of men, but they have like one long leg and one huge foot, and they kind of just jump around on that one foot, or they use it to propel them to make them jump further. Again, very sort of fanciful, very fantastic. Then we move on. The story moves on a bit, and then we get Eustace finds the cursed gold and gets what he deserves. Basically, he gets cursed with the curse of being transformed into a dragon, which everybody knows, right? If you find a hoard of gold, right, somewhere that's been hidden, or it hasn't been touched for a long time, and there's dead bodies around it, there's probably a curse on it. Right, now that might not be real for the real world, as far as we know. Again, people opened up Tutankhamun's, I think it was, yeah, King Tutankhamun's chamber, and everybody that opened it up eventually died. Again, we could just say that's coincidence. It depends if you believe in curses or not. But again, we all know if you find a hoard of gold and it hasn't been touched and there's dead people around it, there's potentiality that we should probably leave it home and not touch it. Right, but no one told Eustace this, again, because him being a young boy. So he's going, oh, look, jewelry. So he puts the golden band on his arm. It curses him, turns him into a dragon. But it's his own fault at the end of the day. But he learns a lesson from becoming a dragon. He becomes more humbled and a lot more understanding of his role and who he is as a person. Again, as he says at the end of the story, it's not so bad being a dragon. And so he learns to be a better person while not being able to do certain things. He learns, and that's the main point of the story, and that kind of adds on to his character arc when we actually meet him in the later books, when he's like front and center with Jill Pole in the next sort of few books and stories. Sadly, they never made any more films after this one, but I would have liked to see him do more films with Will Poulter and him growing up and him being a lot more mature, and eventually him becoming maybe even a soldier and a warrior as he goes to kind of help save Prince Caspian. But they sadly never went that far. Let's have a look. Then after that, they basically I missed a bit out here because I was just kind of at this point, if I remember correctly, I not that I wasn't enjoying myself. I kind of like looked down at my phone to see, because I had somebody message me. Next thing I know, I look up and I've missed a lot. But from what I remember correctly, from what happens after this, is that they find their way to Aslan's table. They find the other three lords that they were looking for, and that they'd basically been enraptured, entombed in like roots, and basically a star lady, a star being, kind of, I don't know what you'd call her really, but a star basically comes down, and they say, what happened to them? Was they cursed by the food? She's like, no, 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 no. All are welcome at Aslan's table, but one of the main rules of Aslan's table is you leave all grievances behind. That you don't sort of start wars, you don't fight, you don't get angry. It's meant to be peaceful, and anybody that disrupts that peace will be entombed, basically. So because they were fighting amongst each other, they got entombed in sort of what's in roots. But they're still alive, they're still breathing. It's just the fact that they're just kind of stuck in stasis until the spell is broken. So the other men sit down, eat the food. Prince Caspian, Lucy, Edmund, and not Eustace, because he's not there because he's still a dragon, basically go out and find that they need another sword. The other sword is sadly in the evil island, and they've got to go there to go get it. So they set sail there, and this is where again there were many moments where I was thinking, where's the epicness? Like, where's the big, grand, epic sort of battle or boss or that sort of thing? Well, we finally get it here at this point in the story, where they're in the Evil Island. It's very sort of a huge CGI monster, because the Evil Island, the mists, basically anything that you fear, anything that you're scared of, anything of that from your worst nightmares. So if you're scared of Pennywise, for example, it's the clown. Um, there's a potentiality that you will see him, but it's anything that you fear. If you're scared of snakes, scared of spiders, if you're scared of certain people or certain things, you will then see it, and it'll be like a torture to you. But as they make way through, Edmund sees the White Witch, Jadis, again. She tries to kind of tempt him, like, come to me, I know you want to be a king. I will let you rule, I'll let you be the king. Obviously, he doesn't fall for it. He kind of, Edmund's still haunted by her, and I think he always will be. I think he will always be sort of have her at the back of his mind, of not just the treachery he did to his family, but kind of the spell of her spell. Every time he's in Narnia, will always sort of linger. I think even in the real world as well, I think her spell will always sort of linger on him. It will have an effect on him for the rest of his life. But as they find the Lord goes, we've got to turn around. We've got to get out before anything bad happens, before we can't get out. With Lucy then asks Aslan to guide the way. He brings down, I think it's like a seagull, like a giant bird, that shows the way out. But as they're leaving, the Lord's basically like, don't think anything. It's kind of like Ghostbusters. Like, don't think of anything evil, anything at all. Keep your mind blank, because anything you think of will be used against you. And it won't let us leave, and it will like try to kill us, basically. Edmund basically pulls a ray and goes, oh shit, and they're like, what's wrong, what'd you do? And he goes, I didn't mean to, it just popped in. And next thing you know, this kind of like, I don't know what kind of nightmares Edmund has, but like this thing was like on next level HP Lovecraft mixed in with Dead Space. Okay, this thing was like a giant like sea sort of, I wouldn't even say sea serpent, like a giant snake sort of thing, where like its chest would open up, and there'd be like that, you could see all its insides, and it's like got teeth in there, and like the little fins that come out from its chest are like claws, and they're trying to wrap itself around, like basically swallow the ship whole, and all the people that are on it. Like, it's very Lovecraftian. It's very Cthulhu mixed in with Dead Spacey sort of. Not is it Necrom? No, yeah, Necromorphs. Very sort of like that sort of level of monster we're talking about. Grand CGI epic battle. And Eustace goes one-on-one with this monster as he's a dragon. Does his best to distract it and to keep it at bay, but the crazed lord just basically throws his sword at the dragon, thinking that it's like another beast that they've got to kill. Lands in his arm. Eustace then flies off because he's in pain, and he lands on the beach. And when he lands on the beach, this is basically the Disney-fied version of Eustace's transformation. Because if you listen to my book review of this book, you will have known that I mentioned that the way that Eustace is turned back into a boy in that book is very graphic. It's very brutal. It goes beyond the whole sort of like Narnia sort of darkness. Like, it's proper like real gruesome, where Aslan is ripping the skin off with his claws, and he's eating the flesh, and he's trying to peel away the body, really, to kind of find the boy inside, like an onion, just peeling away at the layers, and eventually Eustace comes out of the shell. That's very much what happens here. The only difference is that as Eustace is lying on the beach, Aslan walks towards him, and instead of like jumping on him and basically biting him and trying to rip his sort of like skin off, he just puts his hand in the sand and he claws at the sand. And as he claws at the sand, magic sort of like claw marks just start to appear in Eustace's chest and Eustace's side. And slowly Aslan starts to dig a lot more into the sand, and more of Eustace is being pulled away at the dragon, and eventually Eustace lands with the sword in his hand on the island where Aslan's table is, and he runs over and he puts the sword on the table, and that sends a big blue light beacon into the sky, which then gets Edmund's sword that he was holding in his hand. That turns blue, kind of like something out of Lord of the Rings whenever orcs are about. but before he stabs the creature, the White Witch appears to him again. He's like, "Take my hand, I'll make you be king. You'll be the king that you always wanted to be. You'll be just like Peter." But he doesn't fall for it. He's like, "No, stab!" Full Harry Potter style, like when he fights the basilisk, stabs it right in the roof of its mouth. Um, the beast dies. The mist clears, and they make their way back out of the island towards Aslan country. I'm gonna have to grab a quick of water here, I think. Has some high quality H2O. I'm sad, I know. So we make our way to Aslan country, and as we go to Aslan country, we meet Aslan once again, and he basically tells the Peveril children, like, this is your last time in Aslan, that you will not be needed again. You've grown up. And it's kind of, again, Edmund again being very much like Peter. He realizes, like, I wanted to be here. I loved being here, but I think it's my time. My time's up. And Lucy, again, it's the same thing. She's now becoming a woman. She's now growing up. It's now her time to move on from Narnia. Um, and then Caspian goes, well, can I go into your land? And Aslan's like, anybody can go into my land. You can if you want. Because Aslan wants to know if his father's there. He wants to see his father. And Aslan's like, if you go over there, there's no return. You won't come back from my world, from Aslan's country. And again, you could say Aslan country is heaven. It was a form of heaven. But Caspian goes to go through it, then decides, no, I need to be here. I need to be the king. And Aslan's like, you are the king that you are meant to be. Your time, it's not your time yet to go to my country. You don't have to. And then Reapcheap is basically like, well, I've always looked since I was little, look forward to go into Aslan's country, and I've done many adventures in Narnia, and I've done many things. Um, but I think it's now time for me to finally go on my last adventure and to see Aslan's country. And Aslan goes, for one as young and as small as you are as big as heart, as brave as true. And basically says to him, like, you deserved more than anybody to go to my country. All people like you are welcome. And yeah, a little boat appears. Reapcheap says goodbye. And then he goes off into Aslan's country, onto his last adventure. And then he goes over the crest of this huge wave, and then that's it. He's gone. You do see Reapcheap again in the, I think it's in the last book. I think he does show up in the last book by the end. But that is the last that we see of him in terms of the movies. Lucy goes, well, will I ever see you again, Aslan? Aslan said, well, in your world, I am known by a different name. And with you coming to Narnia is in hope of you knowing me better there. Again, to the whole sort of Christianity, God's sort of language of Narnia. I didn't think Disney would go that far, but they went there, because in the last two movies, they never went the whole sort of God sort of Christianity sort of route. So I'm surprised that they went that way with the character in this movie. And then I'm trying to go through my notes. Oh, also, Aslan is getting older. He does. I didn't mention it in my Prince Caspian review, but Lucy, when she meets Aslan properly for the first time, she goes, "You look older," and he says, "Every day, every day that you age, I age as well. I age with you." And that when we see him in Prince Caspian, he's gone a lot grayer. He's a lot older. Obviously, a lot of time has passed in Narnia since they've been there, even though it hasn't been a lot of years. A lot of time has passed, and obviously, Aslan is not just sort of the ruler of Narnia; he's also the ruler of a lot of other worlds, including our own. And every time we go to Narnia, he's a lot older. He's a lot sort of grayer, and that kind of fits into when we get to the last book, which again I'm not a fan of, but that's by the time we get to the last book, the end of the last book, where Aslan is a very old lion, and that it shows the end of Narnia. That all of Narnia kind of ends and starts again. Really, the world sort of encloses on itself. So it's starting to lead up to that. Anybody who knows the books knows that's what it was leading up to. Why he was getting grayer, why he looked sort of not as strong as and as glowing as he once did because he's growing old. Um, so I wanted to mention that one, and again, it kind of fits in again with like Liam Nielsen. Again, he's getting older, so his voice is starting to get more gruffly and sort of changing as well, which kind of adds in. Again, it's perfect casting. It just works. Like everything in terms of this series, it's just perfect casting. Everything just works. Everything was just done well. I said it for the Prince Caspian sort of review, and I'll say it for this one. Disney was onto something with these movies. It's a shame they never carried on doing them because I would have liked to see what happens next. But they were definitely onto something. Everything just hit the right notes. Everything just worked, in my opinion. But they just didn't stick on with them. And again, it could be many things. It could be because they didn't want to do any more, or because they weren't making the money that they were hoping that, or maybe that the last movie flopped. It could be many things. But it is one of those things where it's just like, I wish that things were different, and that we could have got another movie with Will Poulter, and we could have seen what happens next with this. I think it's the Silver Chair is next after this one. And it would have been interesting to see what comes next. So it's a shame they don't, but it's one of those. And then the movie ends, and so does this review. I didn't even put, okay, it's time to reflect, and I think I've already pretty much done that. Like I said, this movie has more of an adventure sort of film. It's more comedy thrown in with Pirates of the Caribbean, which again, Pirates of the Caribbean was very sort of like serious and mature, but also comedic at the same time. Um, Obviously, Johnny Depp went from being like, I love Johnny Depp, and I love his Jack Sparrow, but even though I love the first three movies, even I will admit that Captain Jack went from being a pirate lord, a pirate legend in the first one, like basically like if you meet a western, you watch a western sort of movie, and you have the outlaw, you've got like the John Wayne and all that, and you've got, oh god, he's a legend. You don't want to mess with him. He's dangerous. Um, he went from that to basically being a fool to an idiot. Still being a badass, but mostly just being a fool in the latter sort of two movies, and eventually the fourth and fifth movie just made him a complete imbecile. Especially the fifth movie just made him a complete and utter clown. But I'm not going to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean yet. That's like for season two. We'll get around to that one. Um, but for this film, they very much like went that route of like the adventure Pirates of the Caribbean, um, and I loved it, and it worked. It's a bit strange where you go from being really really dark to get into very more light-hearted. It's strange, but again, it works for the story that they were trying to tell. Um, but my overall sort of thoughts and feelings of the trilogy of movies is, as I said, it worked. With me it clicked. It just made sense. I grew up with these films. I remember, like, I still remember, like, when I was in primary school, and two friends of mine went to go see this movie, and I remember them telling me, like, when they first watched Lion Witch of the Wardrobe, how they were just in tears from when Aslan died. You know what I mean? And again, I didn't know what Narnia was, and I didn't know it was based off a book. I just thought like it was just a new fantasy sort of film. Um, so I remember so many people talking about it, and it was all the rage, and then people buying the books, and we read the book in school, and it was a big thing. It was kind of like Harry Potter. It was like a big sort of thing. Um, Not so much now, sadly, but now Netflix are doing a Narnia show, which should be fun. I look forward to seeing what Netflix do for it, and I will review the Netflix show when it comes out, when it gets made, whenever it comes out. I don't even know if they're shooting it yet. I don't know if it started pre-production or what, but that's the plan. That Netflix are doing one, so when that gets released and so on and so forth, I will talk about it and do a review, and I'll kind of see if it kind of matches up to the Disney version or the books and how close they get it. So that should be a fun thing to do. But yeah, I love what they did here. I really really do. I just wish they did more. But like I said, it's not over. I've read the books. I've read the books since. I loved and enjoyed them. And like I said, Netflix are doing their own thing. So there's a lot more Narnia stuff to come. So I look forward to that. And obviously for you guys, hopefully, um, if recovery isn't too bad and I have some time off, I do have one more thing, Narnia, Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, the video game for the Xbox 360 to review. I want to hopefully get this out before New Year's, but if I don't, definitely expect this as soon as possible. I will try my best with it. It's not a long game from what I've heard, but it's going to be a fun one. So it's not over yet. My journey into Narnia is not finished yet. I'm going back on myself and going to the Prince Caspian video game, um, but it should be a fun one either way. So for the last time in terms of the movies, it's time to leave the wardrobe. And that's it. We are at the end. Look at me go. I didn't do a single break. Well, I had a little bit of a break. I had a water break, but it wasn't technically a break. But yeah, we're back to reality out of Narnia. As always, look, I hope you all enjoyed it. Have you been really, to be honest, I hope you all have been enjoying this month of Narniaisms. Narniaisms? Yeah, Narniaisms throughout this month. I decided to do it because like I said, I love Narnia, and I figured it's a very Christmassy episode. So I hope people are enjoying it so far. And yeah, there's not really much else to say really, apart from if you liked it, please do let me know on Twitter at Nerdstalgic_pod. If you didn't like it, again, please tell me there. All feedback is good feedback. If you listen to this, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music Podcasts, Audible, YouTube. I'm basically everywhere now, to be honest. If you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to give me a star rating, 1 to 5 stars. 5 stars, best thing you heard in your life. 1 star, Vogon's doing poetry. You know how it is by now. And yeah. Also, I just want to sort of rehash to anything. I don't know when this episode will be going out. Obviously, I'm doing it on the Monday, so this most likely will be out probably Wednesday. So if it is Wednesday, then I just want to say thank you to anybody who messages me, which I will thank you anyway. But anybody who messaged me asking me about my operation, again, thank you, and obviously I'll fill you in there. But there's nothing to worry about. So hopefully afterwards I'll be in recovery, but I should be able to kind of find some time to play on the Xbox, and hopefully I can actually find some time this week to sit down and play on the Xbox and at least play a bit of it. I might not be able to complete it, but I wouldn't imagine it's going to be a very long game to complete. For anybody who's wondering, it's the Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian on the Xbox 360. Shouldn't take me too long, I wouldn't imagine, but we will see. But yeah, that's it for now. I'm gonna stop talking, and I'm gonna allow you folks to enjoy the rest of your day, evening, or night, or whenever, wherever you are listening to this. And yeah, so as always, I'm immensely grateful. Thank you for listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast. Thank you for listening to me. I've been your host, Luke, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. All right, guys. Bye bye.